The scripture today is from Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 16. Most of us will probably have heard these before, at least part of it. I'm going to read it twice, actually. The first reading is from the Revised Standard Version, which is what I grew up with. You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hid. Nor do men light a lamp and put it under a bushel, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. Let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who's in heaven. The second reading of the same verse is from the Message. Let me tell you why you are here. You're here to be a salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors of this earth. If you lose your saltiness now, how will people taste godliness? You've lost your usefulness and will end up in the garbage. Here's another way to put it. You're here to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I've put you there on a hilltop on a light stand, shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven. Thus ends the reading.
So quiet. So, yes, as Frank just read, we're talking about the salt and the light. And we're actually going to backtrack a little bit within our journey back to chapter 5. It's like Pam, the whole one step forward, two steps back thing. We get a little bit forward into the Sermon on the Mount and go back. And as Pam already said with the kids, salt is a flavoring. It makes food taste better. So, if we are the salt of the earth, does that mean that we make the earth taste better? I liked the Message version of this. I'm glad that Frank read it for us. I just like the way it phrases things. You're here to be the salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors of the earth. God flavors of the earth. But note that it says that it doesn't tell us to overpower the flavor or cover it up, but just to bring it out, to enhance it a little bit. So what are these God flavors of the earth? Perhaps the flavor of compassion, the flavor of hope, the flavor of kindness. Sounds like fruit of the spirits, right? Maybe the flavor we could try to bring out is the flavor of love. I really like what Brian McLaren said about this particular passage that Pam put in her sermon blog. He says, like salt that brings out the best flavors in food, we will bring out the best in our community and society. But if we go back to the second part of this, we must be careful not to lose this saltiness, or we will no longer be effective or useful in our communities, as it says in the Message. So what about being the light? Think about that phrase. You are the light of the world. Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. There are several different ways we can look at this. I recently decided to let my light shine by going back to school, and I wanted to share a little bit of my story with you. Most of you folks have known me since I was born, or at least a very young child. I've always been fairly involved in the church and the youth group and the choir and things like that, and my faith is a very big part of who I am. When I graduated from high school, it was hard for me to not be able to come down here every week. And I actually didn't go to church my first year of college. year, I attended a non-denominational church in Fort Collins and became part of the worship team there. I got to play guitar, and it was great. It was fun. We went to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina and got to do some mission work, some rebuilding down there, and it was an amazing experience. And soon after, one of my friends and I decided to try a different worship experience, a college group that met on campus at CSU. And eventually, we started going to that actual church that this group was from, which was also non-denominational. I quickly learned that was not the church for me, for several reasons. Not too long after I decided not to go to that church anymore, I went to Wellington. I stayed in Wellington until last September. There was a period of time during college and after that I didn't feel like God was there. I struggled a lot to feel His presence, and thus I didn't feel like I had a whole lot of light to shine. It was a challenge for me to find God in the midst of my work in daycare, and my faith wavered a little bit. God and church and spirituality were not common topics in a setting like that, and so it just kind of got pushed by the wayside. But when I started going to Wellington, it was like the switch was flipped. Being in a community again that was so warm and welcoming and comfortable made me realize how much I'd been missing God in my life. So I began creating relationships with the people there and slowly getting involved in different things. It was building and maintaining these relationships that kind of reignited a spark in me. I felt like my little light was shining a little bit more every week, every time I was there. I had a couple of experiences of helping some of those folks through work through their grief or be just a source of care and compassion for them, just be there for them. And in doing that, I found that I really enjoyed listening and helping people. I felt God's presence in my life more at that point than I had in a long time. I then decided to explore different paths and things I could do with this passion. And I decided to look into IELTS. And I found this degree program that was exactly what I was looking for at the time, and I applied, as most of you know, without the knowledge of anybody else. No. And I felt my light shine since I started back in September, and I think that it continues to grow and get brighter all the time. But let's broaden it a little bit. Several of my classmates are widowed and have children, and I was struck by comments that two of them made after class one day. In class, we were discussing how we can help those in need in different circumstances and different situations, and how the church in particular can come into play, or not. One is a widower with 4 children, and he said that when his wife died, he turned to the church, to his church, and the support that he received and the help he got was a lifesaver for him. The women specifically jumped in and took over being that female role for his children. And he is so thankful for that. On the other hand, a widow, who also has 4 children, had the opposite experience. She stated that when her husband died, she had no support from the church, particularly from the men in her church. She was looking for some of the men to maybe just try and help fill that role for her kids, and no one stepped up. So maybe there's something there. Something that says, you're a light, you can be a light no matter who you are. I'm reminded of my dad and the things that he does for some of the kids on his baseball team, or my sister and the things that she does for the kids that she works with. My mom and the things that she does with the patients and her teams that she works with. And so many of you out there, I could go on with names, but you know who you are. And the things that you do for people. Alice with the cards today is a perfect example of that. Again, we're told simply to shine our light, not blind others with it. Now, it doesn't have to be on just an individual level either. We can collectively let our light shine, and the effect can be amazing. I was watching an episode of Glee a few days ago, and this particular situation really caught my attention. The kids in these 2 different Glee clubs were meeting to perform for each other, and one group happened to be deaf. And so the first group performed their song. They were the hearing kids that went first. So they did their song, and then it was the other kids' turn to perform. So all the deaf kids walked up there and got ready to go, and the piano started playing the introduction to Imagine, the John Lennon. And one of the students spoke the words as they all did the sign language to the rest of the song. And about halfway through, the students from the other group, the hearing group, started to come up on stage and sing with them. They were watching, intent on learning the signs as they went along. And just to see them come together like that as a group, it was very moving. These two groups of kids became a light for each other, a beacon of hope, support, and encouragement for each other. I also think of Patch Adams, who was a psychiatric patient that became a doctor, and his focus was laughter. That was his medicine. And to see the way he made kids laugh that were, cancer patients, and just the things that he did with people that were suffering, was just amazing. In one of my classes, we read an article about loving your neighbor. The author of the article introduced the idea that we're part of a kingdom, not a kingdom. We're all in this world together. It's not about us as individuals. It's about what we can do together as a whole. We are all neighbors and we should love each other. Seems simple, right? But we tend to make things harder than they have to be. Shining our light should not be so trivial. Even the littlest things, a smile, a hug, laughter, a card, are ways our light can shine. So I encourage you all to let your light shine. Again, don't go blasting your high beams or bright lights, blinding and knocking people off the road. But just cruise with your low beams, and they'll get brighter. It's time to stop hiding our light. It's time to embrace it and shine with the flavor of